Okay, so if you remember in the last class, what we started, in fact, what we understood the concept of boundary layer, thermal boundary layer, hydrodynamic boundary layer, and also the analogous thing that can happen is the concentration boundary layer. Now, I that time I mentioned that this thickness that I draw that time, the thickness of the boundary layers, be it say the velocity boundary layer or concentration boundary layer or say the thermal boundary layer. In fact, these thermal and velocity boundary layers are of interest to us for the time being. Now, those thicknesses we mentioned, that is arbitrary, it is shown here on that in that figure. But the point is that there is a rational, there is a logic that which one would be thicker and which one would be thinner. That depends on some scenarios. And how do we identify such scenario? We will see that today. Now, before we go into that details, you have already heard this number, which is called the Nusselt number. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. So the Nusselt number. How do you define that? Anybody remembers? Nusselt number is
It is
equals
the
to
ratio of conductive and convective heat transfer.
not the one. It is the other one basically. That is, it is the
Sir,
convectivity
HL
of.
by KF.
Right, right. So the point is that you need not memorize this thing now. The point is it is HL by Ka. So this is basically the physical significance is that it is the Q convection divided by the Q conduction, which is the heat flux, which is the rate of heat transfer per unit time per unit surface area. Now, the heat transfer through a fluid layer by convection, okay, and the corresponding conduction. So, H is the convective heat transfer coefficient, K is the thermal conductivity of the fluid, L is the characteristics length. Fine. So that this gives the ratio HL by K. So now by looking at this number, uh, tell me that if you want convection, what kind of value of Nusselt number would you expect?
Greater than 1.
Of course, it should be greater than 1. The point is that convection, by convection we basically enhance the heat transfer that is happening by only conduction. The example you can remember that if you have stationary pool of liquid, okay, say you have a stationary pool of liquid in between an enclosure, you have a fluid layer. This temperature is T1 and this temperature is say T2. Okay, if T2 is greater than T1 and there is no bulk movement of this fluid layer, okay, so that means if you can control convection, then essentially the heat transfer is by conduction. But as the conduction happens, the heat transfer gradient develops. What will happen if the thickness is large enough? If the thickness, the fluid layer is big enough, there would be the influence of gravity. And then the natural convection would take place. That means the lower density fluid will try to go up and higher density fluid will try to come to the surface, the bottom surface, provided the gravity acts on such a layer. If the fluid is very, very fine, the effect of gravity is typically neglected. So, and then once this convection onsets or the starts, okay, the heat transfer basically enhances. Now, the typical question or the thing that you can ask yourself, that can the Nusselt number, the value of Nusselt number be lesser than 1? Say you did some calculation for a problem and you got Nusselt number lesser than 1. Is that feasible?
No, sir.
And why?
Because I think in convection it is mixture of advection plus conduction. So it will be 1 plus something advection by conduction.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Smemandu. Did everyone follow this part? When Nusselt number is equals to 1, that means there is pure conduction. For convection, this Nusselt number has to be greater than 1 because it is the convective heat transfer divided by conductive heat transfer. Now, if you remember, the mechanism of convection heat transfer is that it is the combination of advective heat transfer plus conduction heat transfer. So in the numerator, you have advection plus conduction divided by conduction. So it is the 1 plus some component. Now, if the advection is 0, it becomes a minimum value of 1. Okay. So the terminology that I introduced earlier, in fact, is that one is natural convection, the other one is the forced convection. Forced convection example that we say stir our coffee or tea sometimes to make it colder, or we say we blow some air on top of a hot surface to make it cool. So those are the forced convection, that we force the adjacent air near to the surface, hotter surface, to go away from that, so that the fresh air of a lower temperature can quickly comes in and lower the surface temperature. Now, there are few terminologies we will frequently hear now. One of such is, say, the inviscid fluid. or inviscid flow. Do you know what does that mean?
Sir, like I have one doubt.
Uh-huh.
Like you said that if we take the ratio of convection and conduction, we get the Nusselt number, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that convection includes both conduction and advection.
This mechanism, remember, it's not literally, the mechanism involves.
Yes, sir. So the my point is that, sir, when the Nusselt number is equals to 1,
Uh-huh.
then, sir, the conduction which we are dividing means that Nusselt number, then the
Uh-huh.
conduction, that K delta T by L, it is on the surface,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
But the conduction that we are including in Q convection, that is like different
No,
one.
remember, this K is for the fluid.
Yes, sir. No, sir. The point is that conduction is like on the boundary of surface and fluid. That conduction.
Yes, so think of the scenario that instead of composite wall, or even if it's a composite wall, the material is of same material.
So, sir, does that convection includes that conduction?
I'm saying that the mechanism involves movement, bulk movement plus the heat transfer by conduction.
Yes, sir.
Now
That heat
near the boundary layer, this conduction is happening.
Sir, that means what I want to ask is that convection part includes this conduction.
Yes,
The convection part.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Means it
See,
is the part. It
yes,
includes conduction as well as advection, both of them.
advection, right.
Okay.
So in this scenario, say when this is the higher temperature, T2 is greater than. So the nearer to the surface where we are applying this equity or equal relation, that the heat transfer, Fourier's heat conduction is equals to Newton's law of cooling. That's an
Yes, sir.
approximation.
Yes, sir.
We are applying that to both the mode to the fluid.
Yes, sir.
And now if this fluid is not moving at all, then the same heat transfer is happening by conduction. The same mode of heat transfer prevails here.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And in future, you would hear another term similar to this Nusselt number called the Biot number.
Sir, but like when we equate the equations, we assume that the heat due to convection is equals to heat due to conduction. Like we applied
At
that.
the very adjacent, near to the surface boundary layer.
Okay, sir. Means TS we are assuming that the
Yes.
surface temperature.
Right. So that is what I told that time also, that this is the approximation. This is an approximate relation
Yes,
in
sir.
order to estimate the value of H.
Yes, sir. That's fine.
Okay. Because we consider the assumptions of the boundary layer is that the velocity of that fluid that is touching the surface is 0. So that means that is a stagnant fluid. Okay. So coming back to this, so anybody remembers what is inviscid flow, or what meant by inviscid flow?
Viscosity is
Flow
constant.
No
of a
viscosity.
fluid with zero viscosity.
Fluid with zero viscosity. Now, fluid with zero viscosity, it never happens, right? So we do not say inviscid fluid, literally, because the concept of viscosity comes is that it is a measure of the resistance of that fluid when it starts to flow. Agreed? It is the internal resistance to the flow that is called the viscosity, isn't it?
Like
Yes, sir.
flow above the boundary layers.
Yes. I mean, in
It can be considered as inviscid flow. Because viscosity is there, but its effects are not visible to us.
absolutely, yeah. So that is my point. I mean, my question was, have you heard, say, someone saying inviscid fluid? It is always the inviscid flow During the flow, the viscosity is what it matters and its effect is negligible in these fluids, because no fluid is basically is of without any viscosity. So this is an idealized flow condition. Okay, so kind of you can think in a more generic way, we can call it as a frictionless flow. Fine. So this is one terminology. The other one, other ones are, say, we have internal flow and external flow. So what is internal flow? What is external flow? When a flow, okay, is bounded, that means a flow in a pipe or duct. This is an example of the internal flow. A flow happening over a flat plate or around a sphere. Okay, so the flow is happening around a sphere. This is the external flow. Clear? So flow through a pipe is internal flow. That means flow is bounded by walls. But when it is not bounded by wall, it is the external flow. The other types of flow, say a typical example is, say, the open channel flow. By the name, you can understand that the example could be, so the flow through our open drain that we see. The three surfaces are closed, the three sides are enclosed, or say the bounded, but the top surface, that is why I said the open drain flow. The top surface, you can see from the top that some flow is happening. So it's basically partially filled, and that there is a one free surface. So that means the flow of water in river is an example of open channel flow. Fine. So now coming to very common terminology, compressible flow. And incompressible flow. Anyone? What is compressible flow? What is incompressible flow?
Incompressible flow, density of fluid may change.
Incompressible flow. So there is the density variation of the fluid during the flow. Okay, most fluid in the flow that doesn't happen, we call that as incompressible flow. Now liquids are usually classified as incompressible flow because its density hardly changes, provided there is no such abrupt and significant operating condition change. And gas flows are usually treated as your compressible flow. Steady and unsteady flow.
If it do not change with respect to time, that it is steady.
What doesn't change with time?
It may be anything, any property.
Any
For
prop-
flow, it is for flow it would be like velocity of fluid.
Yes, steady flow. Okay, and uniform flow.
Velocity doesn't change with space coordinates.
So
It
steady,
may change with time.
uniform. Yes. So the uniform that you said, right? That means there is no change with location as well. Fine. Now the point here, let me give you an example. You all have seen, say, the nozzle of a garden hose pipe, right?
Yes,
Or
sir.
say the car washing pipe without, say, any external pumping machine. Or when you have a tap, simple tap and a pipe, and you have to wash your car, what you do? Car or bike?
We just press the nozzle to increase the pressure so that
Now the point is that uh, is there any acceleration in steady flow?
yes, sir. If we press the nozzle, then the area at that point decreases. So like the velocity increases because of the acceleration.
Absolutely. So usually, say by bookish language, if if you are told that there is a steady flow, what you would understand that there is no acceleration, isn't it? Because apparent meaning of steady flow is that the velocity is constant, but it is not constant with position. It can happen with a steady flow. And the example that Snehabandhu just gave, I mean, the reason is that the garden hose pipe outlet that you hold, or in fact, the way when you wash your bike, car, or cycle, you try to taper this cross-sectional area. So the water that comes in goes in a jet kind of a manner. So the point is that the flow is steady. There is no external force that is enhancing the pressure, the speed, the velocity of water. So it was a steady flow. The fluid is not accelerating in time at a particular point, at a fixed point, say at a fixed reference frame, but it may accelerate in space. Agreed, everyone? Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir,
Okay. So this concept now will be useful in deriving a couple of equations or in understanding the part. So again, say before that, let me introduce another non-dimensional term is the Prandtl number. TL, Prandtl number. Usually the pronunciation would be correct if you silent the D. Prandtl number. Have you heard of this name?
No, sir.
Prandtl number, anyone? Have you heard this name at all?
No, sir.
Okay. It is the scientist named Wilhelm Prandtl who actually gave us that boundary layer theory that we spent almost 2 classes in understanding nearly in 1905, that kind of era. Wilhelm Prandtl is the scientist who gave us this boundary layer concept. Okay, sorry, it's not Wilhelm, it's a Ludwig Prandtl, Wilhelm Nusselt. I can't got this thing. So Nusselt is derived from Wilhelm Nusselt. Okay, so this Prandtl number is basically the ratio of molecular diffusivity of momentum to the molecular diffusivity of heat. Or in short form, people also remember in this way that it is the momentum diffusivity by heat diffusivity. What is momentum diffusivity? Yeah, the molecular diffusivity due to
Kinematic.
momentum. Sorry.
Momentum diffusivity is kinematic viscosity,
Kinematic viscosity, which is mu by
mu by rho.
rho, right? Oh, sorry. So mu by rho. Heat diffusivity, you have heard this term in conduction.
K by rho Cp.
K by rho Cp. Okay. So just rearrange this. Rho goes away. It happens that mu Cp divided by K. And this is a dimensionless quantity, dimensionless parameter. So it is Ludwig Prandtl. So by looking at this expression, do you find any or say, do you understand the significance of Prandtl number? This Nusselt is Wilhelm Nusselt. Yeah. So now similar to the treatment that we did for Nusselt number, what if the Prandtl number is 1? What do you understand by that? By looking at this expression, what will happen in that case? Prandtl number 1 means what? Both momentum and heat dissipation through the fluid is at a same rate. Okay. Now, if Prandtl number lesser than 1, say lesser than 1 value. Lesser than 1 means heat diffusivity is lesser than the momentum diffusivity. Oh, sorry, the other one. It's basically it's lesser than 1 means heat diffusion is higher than the momentum diffusivity, and that is why it is becoming lesser than 1. The denominator is much higher than the numerator. So that means heat diffuses very quickly than the momentum, and Prandtl number greater than 1, that means momentum diffuses quickly, or say the heat diffuses slowly than the momentum. So what will happen as a consequence? Thermal boundary layer, what would be if heat diffuses quickly?
Thicker.
Would be thicker. If heat diffuses quickly, your boundary layer thickness, okay, this thermal boundary layer and your hydrodynamic boundary layer, which one will be much thicker than the other one if Prandtl number lesser than 1?
Thermal boundary layer.
Thermal boundary layer thickness would be greater than the hydrodynamic boundary layer. And in other case, it will be lesser if Prandtl number is greater than 1. That means there you have better momentum diffusivity than the heat diffusivity. Did you get this point? That there is a logic behind which one would be thicker and when. And for that, you have to remember the Prandtl number, or you have to estimate the Prandtl number, and then you can tell someone that, okay, in this case, thermal boundary layer will be thicker or thinner if it is lesser than 1 or greater than 1. Now, what are the examples, or say the typical material in which Prandtl number is lesser than 1 and in which case Prandtl number greater than 1? Usually the liquid metals, okay, in liquid metals Prandtl number has a value of nearly this kind of a range, 0.0004 to 0.03, which means it's much lesser than 1. So in liquid metal, you have a much thicker thermal boundary layer than the hydrodynamic boundary layer. On the other hand, so the oils, there are different types of oil, and that is why there is a wide range of this Prandtl number variations from 50 to 100,000. Or glycerin, the value starts nearly in the range of 2,000 to 100,000. So that means in this case, heat diffuses very slowly across the boundary layer, and the thickness of thermal boundary layer is much smaller than the hydrodynamic boundary layer. Fine. Any question?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, so this boundary layer, there are the governing equations. So one is very simple, that you have already understood or have got the idea, that del u by del x plus del v by del y is equals to 0. It is the conservation of mass, what's known as the continuity equation. Or say the simple mass balance in steady 2D flow having constant density. Will not go to the derivations because I assume that you did it in your fluid mechanics class. But now, if we try to look at the conservation of momentum, okay, conservation of momentum, and for a say differential control volume. For that, what we have to write, what we have to do, which law applies in order to do that? Do you remember that? So the derivation of Navier-Stokes equations that I told last class that you must
We take a like small element, a cubic element with side length dx, dy, dz.
Say we go for the 2D geometry because I have written here for the 2D continuity equations, 2D steady flow. Let's focus on the simplified scenario. We write the forces, right? Then the point is that what we equate, what is the inception?
Sum of all forces is mass times the acceleration.
Absolutely, which is famous.
So pressure force plus body force plus viscous force is equal to mass into acceleration.
Yes, and that is what is called the famous law.
Newton's law.
Newton's
law.
And that is the second law. Okay, so it is that we have mass into acceleration in a specific direction, because x, y, z that depends, is equals to the net force that you are saying. It can be of body forces, body forces plus surface forces acting in that direction, in that particular direction. So if I have a smaller element of having delta m mass in the x direction, say if I say acceleration as ax is equals to, we can say that f surface forces in x direction plus force due to the body force b in the x direction. Agreed? Where this delta m is nothing but rho multiplied by dx dy of unit width in z direction, say we assume in a 2D geometry case. Fine. Now, so the flow is steady, two-dimensional, which means what we have, u is equals to, it's a function of only x and y. So the total difference, the total derivative of this is equals to del u by del x multiplied by dx, del u by del y dy. Okay. The acceleration ax for a steady flow, Now here that concept comes, that apparently in a steady flow there cannot be any acceleration, but with position there can be. So in that case, it is nothing but du by dt, which is del u del x dx by dt dt. That means it is nothing but u, oh, it's too light, agreed? So this is nothing but this one, this expression, u del u by del x plus v del u by del y. Agreed, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now for two-dimensional, say the control volume, if we say draw that, the scenario is something like this, that you have a control volume, this is of dx, say this is of dy, the pressure force acting on it is p plus dp by del p by del x multiplied by dx. The shear force tau del y dy, provided this is our point, say xy. So this is basically dx, this is dy. Now that means there are viscous force at any point in an imaginary surface within the fluid, and it has two components. One is the normal stress, the other is the shear stress. Okay, the normal stress is related to the velocity gradients with del u by del x and del v by del y. Now these are smaller, in fact too smaller compared to del u by del y, which is the shear force. So usually what happens, we neglect the normal forces. So we consider that only surface forces are acting on this control volume in the x direction. Okay, that is shown like in this control volume. So the pressure, the surface force Fs in the x direction, what we can write, okay, the net surface force acting in the x direction. the net surface force acting in the x direction.
Tau plus del tau by del y into dy minus.
Yeah, so this tau gets eliminated. Oh, sorry. The tau eliminates.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we write this, that is acting on a surface area dx multiplied by 1 minus del p by del x dx acting on the surface area, this one. This is dy, this is dx, where tau is nothing but mu del u by del y. Neglecting the body force. Okay, say this is elemental control volume, where for the time being we can neglect the body force, the influence of body force. Fine. So all these expressions, this elaboration of Fx, if surface force in the x direction, we apply here in this expression. We replace this, instead of delta m rho dx dy, we apply surface force expression here, this one. Okay, all these things now we apply there, and we divide it, the both side, by this element del x del y, delta y del x. Yeah, then what we get, and remember here ax, the acceleration, is of this expression. So the form that we get is, after replacing everything there, we have rho coming from delta m multiplied by u del u del x plus v del u del y is equals to what we have. We replace here tau, del tau by del y. It provides us mu del 2u by del y2 minus del p by del x. Anyone has any question?
No, sir.
What we did, we replaced this expression fx sx here. Okay, we have this delta m as of this expression, ax is of this expression. We divide, after replacing everything, by delta x delta y on both the sides, and what we have is an expression, and it is the conservation of momentum in x direction, or say the x momentum equation. Now there are a couple of assumptions are there in boundary layer, specifically applied to the boundary layer, which are called the boundary layer approximation. and those typically are that u is much lesser than v, that u varies greatly in the direction y normal from the 0 to the wall that at the wall surface to the near free stream value, while the variation of u along the x is typically small. That is the x direction velocity. So that leads to couple of assumptions here and approximations basically. So with that, what happens? We have del v by del x near to 0 and del v by del y is approximately 0. So the velocity gradients, okay, we consider as the negligible with respect to y and with respect to x in such cases. Okay, so yeah, we'll describe once again. We'll start from boundary layer approximations on what it means and how it simplifies this equation in the next class. Fine. So, but before that, up till now, this equation, is there any question? Yeah, go ahead. Someone was asking something.
Sir, the body force, where did you use the body force and
Yeah,
where is the
so
expression for it?
we dropped the body force in this case because the body force is acting on the overall element, and if we consider it's a very infinitesimal element, okay, so for the time being we can neglect it, but if we do not neglect it, it would appear on the right hand side here. Somewhere here that term would be there as it is, because
Okay,
and this body force that would be here, say if I write g here or say the rho g basically, okay, so that body force we have to write or we have to express per unit volume of the fluid, because we are dividing that by dx dy both the sides. So that is why in this Navier-Stokes equation, the body force term, it has a unit, the force per unit volume. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Because we are dividing that by dx dy, or say the volume of a that infinitesimally small control volume, and it would appear here even if we do not neglect. Okay, so I stop here today. Is there any other question? If not, then thank you.
Thank you, sir.